Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for choosing our session. I'm Joe Grapes. I think your program says I'm an assistant principal at Jackson Academic STEAM Academy. Funny story, Dave and I were both administrators there last year. Now neither one really work there. Dave's moved to central office.
I've
moved to a hybrid role.
So welcome to the STEM convention that we have here, brought to you by your friendly neighborhood school nutrition director. So I moved completely out of the schools and went to central office, but Joe and I were the quote-unquote founding fathers of our esports program, and we have stayed involved with it since the inception of it and had some success. And what we're going to do today is just show you a little bit about what esports is all about, how it helps your school, how it helps your kids, how it helps your district. So as esports evolves, it is becoming globally one of the most watched sporting events in the nation, if not in the world. So what you're going to find is that now is your time to get your kids involved in something that is already outperforming Netflix, ESPN, all of those networks that you watch or someone you know watches are being outpaced on a daily, monthly, and yearly basis by people watching professional esports.
Biggest thing we're going to cover is getting started. We'll talk about equipment. We'll talk about leagues. We'll talk about who you should contact for funding and how to get all of your stakeholders on board. Hopefully, by the time you leave, you'll kind of have our blueprint for how to go from nothing to fully competitive esports.
So what is esports? Just let's take a quick poll. Raise your hands if you've ever watched anything, Twitch, YouTube, any form of gaming, Fortnite, Rocket League, Roblox, anything like that. So that is esports. It will encompass thousands of game titles, and it is extremely competitive. So what we're looking at is school-based esports programs that are the avenue to participate competitively for your kids in something that they can do. How many of your kids in here play in an athletic program, whether it be basketball, baseball, football, anything like that? Okay, how many of you realize not every kid can do that? Wow, none of you realize that. Oh, never mind. Okay, I see it. I see some nods. I got you. You didn't have to show your hands. But yeah, with this kind of program, every kid can be an athlete.
And fun story, it's not in here, but our school is a virtual school. We're 100% at home, asynchronous. Our kids come in 1 to 4 days a month, depending on what we have going on that month. But a lot of our kids are your kind of like your in-person kids that are forgotten. You know, they don't really fit in. They don't have a crowd. They don't participate in things. They come to school. They go home. That's it. We had a kid last year. We did it. We did it big. We got jerseys, all the things, fluorescent colors, and we gave him his jersey. And he said, "This is the first time I've been on a team. This is the first time I'm like a part of something." So it's an opportunity for kids that maybe don't have a place to shine in a traditional or like the schools that we went to. They wouldn't have a place to belong.
And I'll say, there were quite a few tears because that night that we presented the jerseys to the kids, his mother was standing there with him, just pouring down the tears because this was the first team he had ever been on. And he was someone who went to my middle school when I was the principal at his middle school in person. And I love this kid. He was wonderful. He's great. Super spirited, just the nicest kid in the world. But, his dad, I'm not going to lie to you, their family height runs about this big. Like, that's just the way it is.
There's nothing wrong with that, by the way.
Okay, I know. Okay, maybe. But, my little guy wasn't going to be able to run out there with football helmet and pads and everything on. And that was it, man. He put on his first jersey. And that's, when Joe and I had a conversation right after that, we decided that this wasn't about championships. This wasn't about being the greatest thing in the world. This was about supporting our kids and making sure that they had the opportunity like everyone else has.
And full disclosure, former coaches, baseball, football, soccer, you name it, we don't cut anybody. It was a really hard thing for me to come to grips with it. We're not cutting you. We'll find a place that you can do something. All right, so we have to tie it into school, right? Because we'll get to this part in a minute, but it's expensive, right? And to justify the outlay of cash, innovation funds aren't going to be there forever, right? We got monopoly money right now, but they're not going to be there, so we have to tie it to class. The computer science component that's now required starting next year, huge benefit, huge way to sell your esports program. But right now, you can't underscore how much you can plug esports into your school environment. It's pretty wide open. We play on console, we play on PC, we play on switches. There's all sorts of things you can do. There are almost 9,000 K-12 schools across the country that are currently implementing esports. There are multiple states. How many coaches, like football, basketball, do I have in here? Love TSSAA, right? All right, it's coming to this. Oklahoma, Texas, Georgia, they all have state athletic association esports membership requirements. So as much as a coach, we can talk about that in another session. But keep that in mind as you build out your program, that there's going to be some eligibility, accountability coming. There's going to be some membership requirements, training requirements, things like that coming. We'll talk more about scholarships on our next couple of slides.
So just a minute ago, I was telling you about just how much people watch professional gaming. So this is visitors in millions per month. My wife probably accounts for about 1 million in the Hulu section with her shows. But then you've got ESPN, HBO, then you have Twitch. How many of you know what Twitch is? Okay, so Twitch is basically a viewership machine for esports. It outpaces MSNBC, CNN, HBO, ESPN, Hulu. And you can see here, ESPN on daily viewership only outpaces just not even more than 220,000. And these are people who are watching professional esports gamers play whatever their chosen title is. And if you have kids, I can guarantee you've seen them on YouTube watching Roblox, Minecraft, Fortnite, Apex. Like, I can list these until we run out of time, but you pretty much get the gist. All the kids are watching it. It's become extremely popular. And some of the people that are playing these games are making millions upon millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. It's not a joke. It's not like when I was a kid and my dad was like, get off the video games and go outside and play. Didn't buy that for you to sit inside all day. Like, things change, times change. This is an example. This is where it's headed. And these kind of graphics show it. So where are esports teams? Pretty much everywhere. I mean, I'm like 97% sure the North Dakota one is kind of borderline Montana. But other than that, Oregon is like an empty spot. But Canada, as you can see, Vancouver, all the way over to Toronto, a lot of this that you're seeing does happen heading this way, to the east. New York, New Jersey. I know that Joe and I both said it wasn't really important if we won a championship, but humble brag, Okay, I'll wait. But just know something else is coming here in a second.
All right, so same map, just a little bit different way to view it. The distribution, concentration of your esports teams. The green is the highest concentration, gray is the next level, and then, I'm sorry, yellow is the next level, and then gray is where it's like the desert for esports. I'm assuming that this probably mirrors what you had in your mind of states that probably don't have a lot of esports activities going on. Montana, Idaho, Wyoming. But let me go back. We don't either, right? We have a very small esports representation in our state. There's a couple schools in Middle Tennessee that we compete with. There's another school in West Tennessee that's not in the same league as us, but they've been competitive for a couple years. Again, going back to pulling it into academics, this is a STEM conference. This is like bread and butter, right? It fits in so many different, former CTE teachers, it fits in so many different CTE categories where you can plug in your audiovisual folks, you can plug in your coding folks, you can plug in, I'm blanking now. You can plug in
Everything, pretty much. And I know Joe is listing them specifically, but in just a little bit, we're going to show you a graph that's going to blow your mind with every single subject that touches or can be related to esports. So now we're going to look at how do we get started. And this is kind of how we run our classrooms and how you run your data on your classrooms. You define what your expectations are. You find what your needs are. I know my kids are low in this, high in this, medium here. I need to focus there. So then once you know what you need, you launch everything. Once you launch that lesson, let's just relate it back to the classroom, you launch the lesson, you're going to get your feedback. That allows you to reevaluate. Did I do a great job? Did they do a great job? How am I going to fix it? And once you know the answers to those, guess what? You go back and you redefine your expectations. And once you do that, it's the same exact thing that you do with your esports team.
sounds a lot like the design process, right? Like it never stops. We had a very successful year last year. We totally revamped and are doing things we didn't do last year because we saw some holes. When you start setting things up, you need to talk about games, right? Probably the first thing that comes to everybody's mind, the games that you need to maybe ask the most questions about would be the first-person shooters. Our first year, just full disclosure, we made the call. We didn't even ask if it would be okay. We just said first year, no shooters. We did Rocket League. We did Super Smash Bros. Those are, I think, low-hanging fruit in the esports world.
Yeah, very low-hanging, really easy to get your
and low
foot
risk,
in the door.
Right? Like nobody's gonna be upset that Mario and Donkey Kong were fighting. Right? It's okay. Second year, we did branch out. We played in Valorant this year. It is a first-person shooter, but it's sci-fi, futuristic. The biggest thing is when you build in that buy-in from your stakeholders. So superintendent approval, principal approval, athletic director approval, making sure that everybody knows, like, hey, this is what we're playing. Here's the game, because most of the folks we talk to are maybe, I don't want to sound stereotypical, they're in a different age bracket, right? So maybe video games are not their forte. So when we say it's this kind of game or this kind of game, they're like, so making sure they understand the ins and outs of the game so that we have approval so that nobody's going to be blindsided when they get an angry parent that says, did you know our kids are playing? They can say yes. Be sure that you loop them in when you're choosing games like that.
So one of the other things, just knowing expectations, partnerships. We're going to speak more to that in just a little bit. We'll talk about what we found. Championing your students, connecting your students to colleges, coaches, and sharing your success. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, every avenue you can think of. Get your kids out there, get your program out there, because it really helps you to elevate and escalate everything that you're able to do.
Here's just a quick example of kind of what a typical week would look like for us. We'll practice 2 days early in the week, have a match at the end of the week. That next week, film study, right? Football coaches, you go back, you watch what you did wrong. I was shocked our first year doing it. It looked like chaos to me. Rocket League looked like chaos. But then you go and you break it down. You talk with the kids. You talk through strategy. Practice again later in the week. Game again. And you kind of you hit a rhythm.
Agreed. And this is just sample discussions that you're having during this time. Just the days and ranges can vary, but those are basically when you're looking at, time in the classroom, you're reviewing some of these things.
The next big thing is just like any team, you have to set those expectations. For us, that started with a student code of conduct and a parent code of conduct and permission, making sure that parents understood, again, what games we're playing, what their students are going to be exposed to. Another piece, when you talk about Twitch, when you talk about streaming, making sure they understand appropriate commentary, right? Keeping things civil. There's a lot of trash talk that goes on.
G-rated. E for everyone.
Yes.
That's what you got to remember
Yes.
about talking on your microphone.
And we do things like our team will scrimmage a college club team. They don't have the same maybe parameters that we do. They might be a little bit more aggressive with their commentary, but making sure that our kids don't get sucked into that, because it's not going to be like this all the time, but a lot of our experience, our kids will win, but what gets screenshotted is not the score. It's some nasty thing that a kid typed back, and we're the ones that look bad. So making sure that you make those clear. The other piece is making sure kids have that growth mindset. Yes, we're here to win, but we want to get better. So focusing on less on results and more on improvement.
With this, and I'm going to let Joe handle that student activity side, super important. This is your media release form, okay? I am 99.9% positive every one of our districts has one of these. So the league that we played with, kids do interviews. It's featured on ESPN News and ESPN2. The league that we're with works in coordination with ESPN with their national finals and everything like that. We had to make sure these were ironclad, because our kids were going to be on TV. They were going to be on Twitch. They were going to be on YouTube. And it's going to be there until, in perpetuity. So you just have to make sure that's ironclad.
And I know I mentioned earlier that Texas was one of the first ones to adopt an athletic association that makes esports a part of it. This is Dallas Independent School District. They've been doing esports for a long time. We've had a couple of discussions with them. Their student activities permission is probably the most robust and complete. They list title by title, age restrictions, all of it in there. I would suggest you do that. Dave talked about E for everyone. They include that there in the bottom, just for those parents that maybe don't know. I know we have plenty of parents where they buy the games, they don't look at the games. So explaining to them what those letters mean.
So partnerships, who is out there to help us? So just a minute ago I said there was going to be a humble brag. There is. We had the top-rated Rocket League high school team in the nation. We qualified to go to Walt Disney World. We went to Walt Disney World and competed for the national championship. And we did so because we had really, really good partnerships. So we were the only high school at the national championships to be sponsored corporately by ASUS Computers and Technology, Best Buy for Education. And this year, because of my wonderful partner over there, my former AP, my friend, we have two other very large, actually larger than Best Buy for Education, that are coming on board for next season because they were able to see the games. They're able to see it on Twitch. They were able to see the response. One of our kids, Riley, is like ranked number 4 amongst all kids, all adults, all players in Rocket League. So he was, we just got lucky. He just happened to live in our district and go to our school. So
Kind of like the Phil Jackson quote. He had Michael Jordan. Riley was our Michael Jordan.
and then we had Scottie Pippen and
We had a few Horace Grants.
nah, not even Horace Grant. We had I don't know who was last on their bench, maybe Luke Longley or somebody like that. But yeah, we had one guy who, God love him. Come on, big man, you do best you can. But yeah, he did his best. But we had Jordan and we had Pippen, and then we just had the guy on this end.
Yeah, and full disclosure, the humble part of that brag is we went to the national championships. We had our jerseys. National championships were sponsored by a competitor of ASUS. So we got to pose with ASUS's logo on a backdrop of their competitor. And then we laid an egg. We got absolutely creamed. We lost every match and left after one day.
But we had a great time the rest of the time, chilling out at the pool and
because we
running
were
around Orlando.
We were in Disney World, right?
Yeah. So
Okay.
It wasn't awful.
So as far as leagues go, there's a bunch of different options. Your main 4 are going to be Generation Esports, NASEF, Play VS, and EGF. You'll notice with Play VS, it does say NFHS. They're the chosen esports league for the NFHS. It does come with some regulations, and like anything regulated, comes with some additional cost as well. When you talk about just jumping in, I'm going to go out of order. Jumping in, if you want low cost, not much skin in the game, NASEF costs you absolutely $0. You just have to have your equipment. Because of that, it's the second largest league. We don't really do anything with them at all. We looked at them as an option, decided to go a different direction. For me, I think the next tier would be EGF, that's Electronic Gaming Federation. That's what we belong to. That's what our Middle Tennessee opponents belong to. It's also, when you talk about the Big East has a formal conference schedule that they play with their schools, and it's through EGF. When we were there for the high school national championships, the college had just finished. One of the biggest things that EGF does, they did a really good job of partnering. They partnered with Disney World, and they partnered with ESPN. So these national championships are televised, and they're hosted at Disney World.
Now, I will say this, with EGF, okay? This is like when you get married and it's your starter home, okay? This is before you have kids, before, anything else. This is your starter home, and it's really nice for a starter home. It doesn't have a pool, but you got a big backyard. But expect to plant a for sale sign in this yard within about 1 to 2, maybe 3 years, just because there are other leagues here that have involvement with other organizations that are just more beneficial for your students.
Yeah, and that's not taking anything away. EGF's been a really good partner for us. They've worked with us to get going. They also offer a middle school program, competitive middle school program. So when you talk about building a program, building out a base that you can bring up, they're a good option. One of the biggest things with cost is it's $30 per student. They do anticipate that going up annually. That's per season. So you play fall, you play spring. So $60 per kid per year. There's no maximum. So we were from a small school. That wasn't a big deal. Having been at larger schools, if you think about having 100 kids participating in both seasons, it starts to add up. When we start talking about Generation Esports and Play VS, their cost models have a max, but it's because they cost more. Your base buy-in is more. We've looked most recently at Play VS. They do partner with NFHS, so it's just a little bit better setup. It's also less of a lift on you as the esports coach or as the tech director, and less of a lift on the student. They set up all of your matches. They set up your live streams. With EGF, with NASEF, most of that setup falls on the team, on the students, on the coaches.
All right, so when you're looking at a majority of this, like I said, starter home, college dorm, married life, retirement. Okay, so what I'm saying is you can start over here, and they're great. I loved dorm life in college. It was wonderful. You know, music, everything else, happy days. When I was a newlywed, starter home, great time. Got married, had a couple of kids. This was wonderful. But this is where I want to end up parking my car because of its relationship with NFHS.
And your biggest thing with Generation Esports and Play VS is you're going to have a max cost. So larger school, those may just be your better option right off the bat because they'll have your infrastructure, but you'll also max out. With Play VS, it's $3,000 a year, $1,750 up there in Generation Esports. All right, $25 million in scholarships every year for esports. All right. As someone who just recently, I think we're rolling up on like 20 years being out of college, finished paying off college debt, $25 million in scholarships to play video games. There's 400 higher ed institutions that have it. Most of those are here. There's a bunch in southern Canada that they fund it heavily. There's more scholarships available outside of this $25 million for students that want to be on a club team but will major in something attached to esports, whether it's audiovisual, IT, game design, graphic design. The biggest thing is getting students to understand that that money's there. Best example I can give, Riley, that Dave mentioned. He was a freshman for us last year, played in the national semifinals or the qualifier to get to the national finals, and got a call from Cumberland, not far, 30 minutes away. Cumberland called our freshman in high school and offered him a full scholarship. Crazy.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah, and there's local schools, Cumberland, Bethel over in West Tennessee. There's a lot of smaller schools like that that are offering full scholarships for kids that will come and do a computer science or an AV or IT track.
So if I could throw something in real quick, there's $5 to $8 million of unused scholarship funding. How many of you have young ladies who are super interested in science, STEM, technology, design, things like that? Just so you know, they are dying to have young ladies come into the sport. It's mostly male-dominated right now. The coaches that have contacted myself, and I know that have contacted Joe, have asked us, do you have any young ladies who are interested that we can coach up, that we can get on our team and provide scholarship money to? They really want to see female gamers taking a much larger role at the collegiate and the professional level. There's $8 million laying on the ground, y'all. And it can go to one of your kids within the next couple of years.
And we're not going to read them. There's a ton. Career pathways, options, it's pretty much limitless. Broadcast is one that we're implementing next year, media, but sales, marketing, sky's the limit for where you can apply the coding skills and the teamwork skills, the problem solving that you'll learn, that these kids will learn. All right, Dave talked about partnerships earlier. We've partnered with ASUS really from the beginning. And ASUS, this is just kind of a historical graph, ASUS stays ahead. They've done a good job of progressing, making sure that esports athletes, gamers have options and they have the best options available. We partner directly with them through our Best Buy and ASUS representatives. They do awesome work. Happy to share their information with y'all. Just shoot us a message. But they do things like, this is what you'll need for this game. These are the video cards you'll need. These are the questions you should ask about infrastructure, like your connection speed. Talk with your IT team about firewalls. They do a really good job of partnering with us, making sure we know what's new, what's coming, and maybe why we don't want to get a device versus another one.
And so this is Tony. This is obviously my school email, and this is Tony from Best Buy for Education. Tony will stay in touch with you every step of the way. And I think he does most of Tennessee. So if any of you are thinking about this, we can put you in touch with Tony. He's happy to help you, but just know he holds your hand through the entire process.
And he'll champion you. Tony does a good job of providing, like you'll see a conference that has a letter to give to your administration to justify it. Tony will produce the reports you need. He'll give you the numbers you need to take to your administration and provide the proof of concept.
The other nice thing was with Tony, he actually sent a crew down to our school to do a case study for Best Buy. So we're fortunate in that we were the first case study for Best Buy for high school esports. So we went out to all of their corporate locations, all of their physical locations, everybody there. So Tony, like you said, he champions what we're doing and the work that we're doing and how to help each other. He walks us through everything. He's awesome. And then I'll let Joe talk to you a little bit about how awesome ASUS has been for us.
And full disclosure, not a sales pitch. This is our partner. They've been really good to us. We've used some other devices as well, but they've been a good fit for us. Things you need to consider with anyone. Number one for me would be customer service. We had a tower that just blew up. It stopped working. Called them next day. We had a replacement and a slip to send the other one back, no questions. They'll take care of you. Be sure, my suggestion, when you talk about desktop, laptop, console, there's some things you're going to run into that maybe you don't think about, like E-rate. E-rate restricts commerce with your internet, right? So whether it's a Leapfrog pad or an Xbox, you're going to run into some funding issues. Additionally, content filters, generally, if it's a school content filter, it's not going to let an Xbox access the Xbox Live account that it needs to, or PlayStation, or any of that. Desktops for me would be the way to go. Laptops are fickle. Laptops have a shorter lifespan and less options. You may get a desktop and realize you need more oomph. Well, you can more easily take parts out, put parts in to get that beefed up.
All right, so one of the things, just want to reiterate, you did see it correctly, $25 to $30 million worth of scholarships. And then after that, the best advice that Joe and I can give to you is just take a real deep breath, enjoy the ride. Once you have your own team, it was one of the best times I've ever had. I've coached middle school, high school football, middle school baseball, won championships, lost championships, and there was nothing more fun than watching my kids do this because they were so into it and they practiced and they trained, got to go to Disney, and it was just an amazing experience. So Joe, as we were going over this earlier, he was like, enjoy Space Mountain, Thunder Mountain, whatever mountain roller coaster you want to get on because it's a lot of fun. Just strap in and get ready.
All right. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah.
Anybody currently running an esports program at your school? Okay.
Oh, congratulations. You're going to have a blast with it, I promise. So up here you see Joe and I's email. Mine's going to come back with a weird signature that says Director of School Nutrition and Safety. So don't think it's strange. I promise I'll get back to you. But the experiences that I know I speak for Joe and myself, the kids that had never had a jersey before, the kids that were never the ones that got picked to play on any team, the kids that were the ones that always get left out. It was really, really cool to have a team full of those kids who had the best time of their life, and could say, I played in a national championship. And they're not lying about it. They absolutely showed up and showed out, and they were some of the most amazing kids I've ever worked with. So if you have any questions you're not thinking of right now, feel free to email us. If anyone does have another question, welcome to it.
I'm just curious. I know you've got a virtual school. You've got picture a little rural high school and maybe Upper Cumberland, Tennessee, that wants to start a program like that. How do you vision that? Do the students stay after school and practice together, or are they going home, and are they doing it?
So for
You can
us,
do both of them.
2 stories. One, it's Wilson County Schools here
Yes.
in Nashville. They started their program during the pandemic. They started it with 0 school devices. They started it with 0 in-person anything because it was during the pandemic. Their kids played at home on their devices, their device of choice. That's one thing about EGF, with the lift being so heavy on the team, on the kids, on the administrator, on your tech folks. You can play remotely. A lot of times our kids will play remotely, even though we have a 14 device lab, where we can have everybody in there and broadcast from there.
It's an arena. Go ahead and say it, man.
We have an arena.
All right.
Yes.
Hey, he's very modest because, as you can tell, one of us is the business aspect of this, and the other one's kind of like the fun kid. But Joe designed out the entire esports arena. LED
I did
lights.
the purchase orders. I did
Everything.
That's what I did.
Yeah. We got it all paid for through grants. It was pretty amazing. Thanks to Miss Plyler and her team and innovation. Everybody, Molly Plyler right over here. They got us the cash. They got us the grant that we needed. Towers, Xboxes, Nintendos, LED lights, paint, signs, whole 9 yards. It was amazing. But to go back to your question on how do you do it when it's small level? So we expanded this year to some of our schools that are in Jackson, Tennessee, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. The middle school I used to be principal at literally had a cornfield next to it, and then one behind it, and then one to the other side, and then there were some streets and stuff in front of us. But, we were in the middle of nowhere, and those kids just stay after school 45 minutes to an hour, made sure they had a ride, everything else. They practiced with each other. Then they would go home, and when it was time to play games, they just dialed in through their internet, played their game. I watched the replay of it, kind of critiqued what was going on, what went right, what went wrong. Came back, practiced next week, played another game.
Yeah, and I think infrastructure-wise, the biggest road speed bumps we saw, not roadblocks, but speed bumps, was internet speed. Some of our kids are very rural. They were on like a hotspot that we provided, and it's just it's not fast enough to keep up with like a Rocket League.
Yeah, the frame rate for Rocket League is pretty extreme. Frame rate being how fast does the game have to process to keep up with others who are playing online also. So your ping on that has to be pretty tight in order for it to be competitive. Our kids, and I know you're talking about Upper Cumberland. I don't know how the internet is there. Maybe you've got great internet, maybe you don't. I know that we're trying to run fiber internet now so that all of our kids can catch up, but it can be difficult. And we've seen other teams who struggle with that, and that we have to work with to get just the right moment in time to where everybody can be online and everybody can play.
And there's other options. I think of socioeconomic barriers. We're 100% free and reduced lunch across our district. We've got kids where either they can't afford an Xbox, PlayStation, PC, or shouldn't. We don't want that to be a barrier. So we don't send towers home because those are the big money. But like an Xbox, and it doesn't have to be the newest Xbox. It just has to be an Xbox. I can access Xbox Live and play Rocket League. But we can send that home with them, sign it out, bring it back. So there's options there that you can do.
And I had a couple of fraternity brothers who, their kid is tired of the PlayStation 3. We're going to buy a PlayStation 4. They'll give us the PlayStation 3. I can give it to one of the kids and just kind of go through that. So you're going to have to network on some of this stuff. Like Joe was saying, our district 90% of our kids really don't have the most up-to-date system, the most up-to-date internet, the most up-to-date a lot of stuff. But through those sponsorships, connections, partnerships, friendships, things like that, I mean, heck, I go to the flea market just about every month looking around to see if there's a random console that somebody just wants $20 for. I have a friend who can repair it if they need to, and then it goes out to a kid. So it's just, I know it's not fun spending your own money. Like, I can tell you I've probably spent more than I made putting in stuff to the program, but it's well worth it. It is to me when that kid gets to play from home just like all of his friends do. Any other questions?
What's the lowest grade that you can start esports with? Based on like an elementary education.
You know, believe it or not, Super Smash Brothers on the Nintendo Switch, rated E for everyone, probably around the 8 to 9-year-old. So you could start an elementary program at the 8, 9, probably in grade 3/4. Work it up until they get to 6. 6, they can move into EGF middle school. So 6th, 7th, and 8th, they can continue gaming then. So they have experience, 3, 4, 5. Competitive, 6, 7, 8, high school, 9, 10, 11, 12, scholarship, so on and so forth. So you can start that game at a relatively young age. Some of the others, like, look, Rocket League, the only thing I knew about it is it's soccer with cars. I had no clue as to what was going on with it. And, you know, we had one of the best kids in the nation playing for us, and I'm just like, what did he do? What is, like, you know, suddenly he's upside down, hitting this large silver ball this way and bouncing it off one of his opponents and then hitting it with his back tire. And I was like, this is not where, like, I was used to, like, Pac-Man and Pitfall, Cubert.
Yeah, it's a learning curve when Wolfenstein and the arrow keys were how you played video games.
Yeah, I had zero clue what these kids were doing, but you learn quick.
But the younger
do
ones,
learn
there's Minecraft, competitive Minecraft.
Yeah.
There's lots of options out there.
How many of you have kids that love Minecraft right now? Just a bunch. I mean, there's probably a bunch in that Roblox game. And I think there's like 1 million games within the Roblox game with different types. My 9-year-old, that's like the grand poobah of that. He tells me, I'm going to play Roblox. And then I see like Pet Simulator 7. And I'm like, what is this? He goes, it's Roblox. And I'm like, it's not Roblox. Like, it says something completely different. What are you looking at? And he's like, oh, this is where you get your own pet, and then you grow it, and then it grows up, and then it's a big pet, and then you get another pet. And I'm like, that's not Roblox. He's like, but it's in Roblox. So I have no idea, but there are thousands of games you can play with it. And, you know, he's 9. So I'm sure by the time he gets to that 5th, 6th grade level, he'll be saying, Dad, I want to go and play on your esports team. So it starts at a young age. Yes, ma'am.
Is there an opportunity for kids who's like schools don't have an esports? Like, I'm personally thinking for my son now, not my child, but my son, not my class.
Great.
But like, I can't get him off of it, so I'm not able to send him to college.
Super good question.
So EGF,
Joe, go for it.
EGF, the league that we're in, they have baseball coach, really weird rules in baseball, rules about crazy things like the name has to match on the lineup card, not the number. Nobody cares about the number. Our league has rules like that too. Like if your school or if your student doesn't have an esports team, they can participate with, like we have some kids that are at a private school in our district.
We also had a kid from Denver. He did not have a program to play. He was good friends with Riley. He said, hey, I want to play on your second team. And we were like, okay. I called his principal. I said, hey, do you happen to have esports? He's like, no, who is this? Like, have a great day. And then I was like, yeah, dude, you're signed up. Let's go.
Yeah.
Like, let's rock and roll with team number 2.
Yeah, and read the bylaws because there's weird loopholes and things like that all over the place.
Yeah, so if your son enjoys a game, find a school that does it.
Yeah.
Because with EGF.
Email us. Is he
Yeah.
good?
Wait,
Is he good?
What's he good in? Welcome to JASA. Jackson Academic STEAM Academy sounds like a great place for him to come. And we can make it to Disney. It's a free vacation / coaching.
It's a working vacation.
Exactly. See? Don't be so Stone Age. Let that kid just tear that stuff up. And then when he aggravates you, break that thing.
Earlier, remember we said, don't focus on what you don't have. You don't have somebody playing outside, but what you do have. All right.
Yeah, you want to know what? There's 1,000 kids out playing basketball that aren't going to get a scholarship. But that one right there who's jacking around on some Roblox, that might be the one, okay? So don't forget that.
All
With
right.
that being said,
We want to be respectful of your time. Thank you. If you have any other questions or any other promising esports athletes without a place to play, email us, let us know. Happy to help.
hey, thank y'all very much for coming out. We appreciate it.